Boker Tov. Today's daf is daf Chof Dalid in קידושין as we learned for Shlema for Elizabeth Ben Ruma and Yosef Israel Ben Chaim Michal. We're at the two dots, a little bit below halfway down the short page on Chof Dalid and Aleph. Tana Yosef B'Shem B'Ayim. We learned that a couple of days ago that the Eved Kanani goes out. When does he get his liberation? Either with shtar or with kesef under different circumstances, according to Rav Meir one way, according to Chacham another way. The Chacham generally go with the Chacham, not the sheet of Rav Meir or Rav Shimon HaLosser, but rather the sheet of Rav Shimon HaLosser, but rather that he goes out free with kesef or shtar. It means he gets shichur, whether he could accept it himself because get to be arban kechad, or but if somebody else does it on his behalf, or if he raises money on his own, money that some money was given to him under the condition that his master would not own it, because otherwise, menastam, if he owns something, the master owns it. So you can go out with kesef or shtar. More added on chalit and meshicha. Yesterday, my daughter asked me if could he free him just by making him hefker. L'chora, yes. We'll see if the Gemara deals with that. But l'chora, you could just make him hefker, free him that way too, without a get shecher. But here we're talking about other ways to go out. What else can he go out? Well, the Torah tells us ways. Tana says the Gemara, Yosef B'Shem B'Ayim. If his master knocks out his tooth or his eye, the pasuk says beferish. We have a pasuk in Shmos Perek Chaf Aleph, pasuk Chaf Vav, I think it is. Pasuk Vav B'chiyaka ish es ein avdo. If he knock his tooth or his ein amasa or his male servant or his female servant, b'shichasa, and destroys it, he goes out free because of his eye or because of his tooth. In other words, he knocks out his tooth. It's called shein b'ayin. Now, we had before, an Eved Ivri doesn't go out that way. If you have an Eved Ivri we talked before about 6 years or yoga, whatever, he goes out, doesn't go out shein b'ayin. If you knock out his tooth, right, pay the doctor's bills and get a replacement, whatever you have to do, fix him up. But he doesn't go out free. Special loch by Eved Kanani goes out free. Yosef B'Shem B'Ayin. Not only at Rosh Ivarim, any other projecting limbs. The Mishnah Negoim mentions 24 different projecting limbs, including all your fingers and your toes, plus other things that project, like a woman's nipples or a man's aver. Those things that project, there's 24 of them, are ears and a nose, things that project, that stick out. The Gemara learns out that those also, if you knock out any of those, the Eved goes out free. So it says Bishlam, so it says only if they're things that don't grow back. Bishlam B'Shem B'Ayin Ksivi. It says the pasuk we just quoted. It says V'chiyaki ish es ein avdo es shein avdo. Yachavshi if shachan goes out free. Elash revar minam. How do we know the other limbs? The pasuk says shein b'ayin. It goes out if you knock out his tooth or eye. How do we know the other projecting limbs? Do me the shein b'ayin, because anything, it's like a mamatzina. Rashi says it's a comparison, just like shein ma shein b'ayin. A moment should be going. These are things which are exposed. They're obvious, right? They're clear. They're exposed. You see, if the guy's missing an eye, missing a tooth, you can see it. They don't grow back. So obviously, you see things that don't grow back. We're not talking about baby teeth. We're talking about regular adult teeth. So so it's learned out of a mamatzinu, which is, we'll see, is really a Torah. It's not just a drasha that the Chacham added on, like Xera that the rabbis on, and the rabbis added on 3 kinds of things. They added on mitzvahs like mitzvah like a Purim or Hanukkah, lighting candles, things like that, reading Bill. That's a mitzvah. They also had Xeros, right? Decrees that they made, like you could say the Xeros, like most of Muktzah, Shabbos is mostly Xeros that you shouldn't come to be over, and the rice, so those Xeros. And then they did various takanot for the betterment of society. However, this is not a drabanan. This is a deraisa. It's learned out of Mamatzinu. Just like shein b'ayin are parts of the body that are exposed and don't grow back. So the same thing, if anything else, if you knock out a guy's ear or his toe or whatever, also he goes out free. We're talking about Eved Kanani only. Why do you learn that? Why do you say Mamatzinu just like shein b'ayin? Just like those two, so the other 22 are also Rosh Hashanah are also, you should go out. Why do you learn that way? Say shein b'ayin is what we call shnei man kechad. If a pasuk wants you to teach you a general principle, it might say it once, and we learn a general principle from there. But if it says it twice the same thing, that means to tell you only those 2 things, nothing else. That's called shnei man kechad. Why did it tell you twice? They tell you dafka those 2, not other things. So why don't you say also shein b'ayin is suksa man kechad? Only shein b'ayin you go out free, not other projecting limbs. It does not teach you elsewhere. You cannot extrapolate from elsewhere. The Gemara says no. Shein b'ayin are not the same. Because if I only say one, I wouldn't know the other. If the pasuk tells us that you knock out his tooth, he goes out free. Shane the cholov, the milk tooth. What does milk tooth mean? The tooth that a child nurses with, meaning it's a small child, right? Shane Shionik the Asad Lachlif. It's obviously, we all know that baby teeth fall out and the other tooth growing from the Evet cotton. And Evet could be any age, right? But an Evet Kanani could be any age, right? And Evet could also be basically any age. I mean, I guess wouldn't be underage. Somebody asked that last week, right? The number of can only be up until the age of 12. And Evet presumably from the age of Bar Mitzvah on, because otherwise his father really can't sell him, and he can't sell himself, and Besson wouldn't hold him responsible for Geneva. So presumably an Evet Ivri is from Bar Mitzvah on. A girl is until Bat Mitzvah. So, but an Evet Kanani can be any age, right? When we talk about the Evet Ivri, the master gives him a shift of Kananis to have more babies. Those babies will be also slaves, children's slaves. Anyway, if it would only say Shane, I would say, okay, maybe you're talking about Shane, a field Shane, not only an adult tooth, but even a child tooth. You knock out a child's tooth, he goes out free too. That's what I might think. Kamashmala, no, ayin, it's got to be something which is permanent, not something which is destined to fall out anyway. Because of Rahmanan, if I only say I and I mean, just like the eye was created with the baby, with this person when he was born. Afkol Shenevri Imo. Anything I would say Afkol Shenevri, only things that were born with him, that were created when he was born. Abel Shane Lo. The Shane only came in later on. I don't know. You can ask a dentist. The truth is, they tell you that the adult teeth are maybe in there also, right? They're in there. They just haven't come down. I don't know if it's all that way or whatever, but they haven't appeared yet. Let's say they're maybe inside his bone, and probably they're not the right size. They haven't grown yet, right? So even if they're inside the gum somewhere, the adult teeth are there somehow, but they certainly have not grown all the way. So they're not there really at birth. So if you knock out his eye, he goes after him and say, okay, an eye, he's born with his eye. He wasn't born with the teeth. So maybe with the adult teeth. So I might think he wouldn't go out. So therefore the pasuk has to tell us both Shane and eye. If I only say Shane, I would think even a child's tooth. Mashma, no. It's got to be something which is going to be permanent. So therefore we need to say, therefore we need to say we need both. Ema. Why don't you say this? Why don't you have a drasha? Kiyake klal. Beginning of the pasuk says, Kiyake ish es ein avdo. Kiyake ish es ein avdo. Yaka, you hit him. Hit him is a general principle. Klal. Shein v'ayin is a prat. You're specifying dafka these two limbs or parts of the body, whatever you want to call them. Shein v'ayin prat. A klalu prat. Ein chamashu prat. We have a klal prat. The rule of the klal prat is you have a klal followed by a prat, a generalization followed by a specification. Ein chamashu prat. Only included at shein v'ayin ein. Only the tooth and the eye. Midiach lo, nothing else. The answer is the pasuk goes on. Lachavshi yishalchenu is a general thing. Send him out. Send him out almost for anything. Chazav v'kalo. So we have followed by another generalization. Again, if we want to be klal prat, the rule is ein chamashu prat. If you have klal prat or klal, it's what's the rule there? Klal prat or klal. You have to done elakaina prat, something like the prat. So any the other limbs are also like the prat. How so? Ma prat before is just like the prat, which is specified, which is the shein v'ayin. Mum shemagoli, it's an exposed blemish. Vein chazman don't grow back. You knock out a guy's eye or his tooth, it don't go back. It doesn't grow back. Avkoman shemagoli vein chazman. So we include any exposed limb which doesn't grow back. So if we're talking about some internal organ or something which is not exposed, that wouldn't be included. Says Gemara prop before mumish shemagoli. Why don't you look at this? Why don't you say add something else on? Say. What is the prat? It has to be like the prat, that it's what? Exposed and it doesn't grow back. Why don't you say also this? It's got to be something, okay, it's exposed. Once you've knocked it out, it no longer can do its service, right? If you knock out the guy's eye or damage his eye, you blinded him, it doesn't work. Knock out the teeth, he can't chew anymore. Vein choser doesn't grow back, so you have three qualities. It's got to be exposed, doesn't grow back, and it can no longer serve its function. It's got it. So the other things are also included. What are they? Anything which is exposed, doesn't grow back, can no longer do service. Maybe that is the case. No, why do we learn a brisa? Let's say you pulled his beard. You pulled the beard. You hurt him in some way. You pulled his beard. The dildubo etzem. You dislocated his bone, maybe a jawbone. You dislocated him in some way, where he goes out free, even though he still has the jawbone. He can still do something there, right? He hasn't totally knocked it out of total service, yet he goes out free, right? Right? So why would he go out there free? If you say that it's got to be something like the Shein B'ayin, so say, okay, Shein B'ayin is exposed, it doesn't grow back, and once you knock out the Shein B'ayin, can no longer do its service. Here you see that even though that he goes out free, despite the fact that it can no longer do its, despite the fact that it could still do its service, right? It's got to be the Shein B'ayin, knock it out, can't do it anyway. You don't have an eye, you can't see. You don't have a tooth, you can't chew there. Right, but here, if you dislocated his jaw, it could still do something, and yet he goes out free. The answer is lachavshi shachenu ripuyahi. The fact is that the extra words at the end, lachavshi shachenu, send him out free. Could have just said chavshi, right? But it says lachavshi shalchenu, you send him out free, meaning under all circumstances. Meaning this is like a amplification. Now here, Rashi says an interesting thing. Rashi says, last week we had some people some Tanam learn the Torah with klal prat. And some learn ribu yumi and riba. Yumi and riba includes more, and it only excludes like one thing. Klal prat or klal, it includes more because there's anything like the prat. It doesn't exclude just one thing. Anything like the prat is included. Riba includes more, but it has one little thing. Here, Raj, so you think that it's a machlokas. One way to learn the Torah is ribu miyat. One way to learn the Torah is klal prat. Depends who the so that's what we said before. The one Tana learns one way, one Tana learns the other way. It's a machlokas how to learn. Here Rashi says, look at Rashi Ribuyi, about 5 lines down in the narrow lines. Ain't a lashon klal lios nidin b'chlal prat. It's not really a lashon of it's not a generalization. The word yishalchenu, like send him out under all circumstances. Ela beriba yumiyat, beriba kol. It's learn riba yumiyat. So here you see that even the one who holds, it's not like a machlokas. Do you learn klal prat or klal? Do you learn riba yumiyat? Even the one who learns klal prat or klal, if you look at the word, sometimes the word indicates that it is an amplification. It's more than just a generalization. All kinds of things, but ribui is more. It amplifies it even more than just a generalization. So he says, therefore, the chavshi shachenu includes more, and therefore, even if it still has some function, right? You want to say only if it loses its function does it go out free? No, even if it has some function, but he's ruined it, he's dislocated the jaw, he still goes out free. So it's more of ribui. If it's a generalization to include even more. Afilu he called al yado. What happens if he hurt him on his hand? He injured his hand some way, but samsa, his hand withered. The sofa lachsa, but eventually it'll heal. Nami, so maybe he should also go out free. Alamatana, why we learn a brisa he called al yado. If he hurt him on his hand, injured him, but samsa, and the hand withered. The sofa lachsa, eventually it will heal. It will return to its original function. Ein eved yotze ben lecheres. He doesn't go out free. Now, if you say that Yishalchenu is a reboy to include everything, include more things, not only if it loses its function, but even if it still has some function, he still goes out free. So here, why, when he hurt his hand and it withered now, but it'll grow back eventually, does he not go out free? What's the point of saying Shein B'ayin? What's the Shein B'ayin? If it means anything, even if it's going to grow back, Shein B'ayin is to tell us something which doesn't grow back. But if it grows back, if it were to grow back, and you'd say, even if it grows back, he goes out free because he injured him. So what's the point of saying Shein B'ayin? If you hurt him in any way, he should go out free. So therefore, Shein B'ayin teaches us that it's got to be something which doesn't grow back. Like a Shein B'ayin, if you knock those out, they're not going to grow back. So that's the limit. So it's got to be Shein B'ayin. That's another way. So now we know that Abikani goes out with a get shichur, right? He can get shichur. He can go out with what? Kesef or star, right? Right. He goes out with kesef or star. What did I say? He goes out with kesef or star, or right, a kesef or star. That's a get shichur. That's one and the same. Star is get shichur, like the Mishnah said. And we're adding on also that he goes out to Shein B'ayin because that's a beferish pasuk. Now the question is, Tarabanan, when he goes out to Shein B'ayin, does he need also get shichur? We said he goes out with kesef. He's bought out. He himself buys himself, or somebody else buys him out. Does he go out also when he goes out b'shem b'ayin? Is it automatic, or does he need to get shichur? So on all these cases, Eved goes out free. What do you mean b'kulam? Presumably b'kulam, all the various the 24 limbs that are the 24 Rashi Barim, projecting limbs that he goes out free, like Shein B'ayin is included in them. But Sarf gets Shecher Derishim. Shimon says he still needs to get Shecher. Still needs to get Shecher. That's what Shimon's opinion. Now we'll have different views. Rav Meir Amar Ein Tzarech. Rav says he does not need it. Rav Lezer goes like if Shimon says Tzarech. Rav Tarfon Amar Ein Tzarech. They're probably said separately at different times. That's why he brings it down this way. Meir, so he starts off. Rav Shimon says he needs to get. Rav Meir says he does not. Rav Lezer says he needs to get. Rav Tarfon says he does not. Rav Akiva Amar Tzarech. Hamachrim Techacham. Those who look for a compromise they said near and diver of Tarfon Shein B'ayin. Shein B'ayin, which say beferish in the Torah, that he goes out free. So probably we would agree with Rav Tarfon that he does not need a get. He says Rav Tarfon, the same thing would be Rav Meir, who says Ein Tzarech, right? Probably I would give Rav Tarfon Shein B'ayin. Torah Zichsalo, the Torah said beferish, Shein B'ayin goes out. So apparently you don't even need a get. The Divrei Rabbi Akiva, I would agree with the Kiva, you need a get, Bashari from the other of the other 22 Rasha Evarim, right? The other Rasha Evarim, that the other projecting limbs, we would agree with the Kiva that you need to get. Since it's a knas, it's a fine of the chacham in those 22. It's like tomorrow, it's a knasu. We say it's a matzah, just like Shein B'ayin are things which don't grow back and they're exposed. So we learn out the other ones too. So it's not a drabban, it's not a knas of some sort. Since it's the Medrash Chachamim, like we had at the beginning of Yivamis, that he starts off with things that the Chacham darshan, but it's the Doraisa. The Chacham darshan the pasuk, they expounded the pasuk, but it's still a Doraisa. Okay, so interesting that at the end of the day, the Machriim said, we'll go like Rav Meir in some cases, or Rav Tarfon in other cases, meaning, and like Rav Meir and Rav Tarfon in some cases, and like Rav Akiva and Rav Elazar and Rav Shimon in the other cases. But we come out, if that's the psak, we don't go like either one. Because Rav Tarfon says you don't need it in any of the cases, any of the 24. And Rav Shimon says you need it in all of them. So we say we'll go like Rav Shimon. You need to get shikra in the other 22, but the ones that are beferish, we don't go. So this is a machriya. You go like some in some cases, some like the other cases, but the psak then comes out not 100% like any one of them. That's the compromise over here. My time at Rav Shimon. What's the reason why Rav Shimon says that you still need to get? Why? It says Yolav Shiluch Meisha. You need to learn. It says Yishal Chenu, right? B'sholcha b'haisel isha acher. Shiluch should send him away from a woman. Ma isha b'shtar, just like a woman is only sent away with a shtar. It's the only way. Either if you're, either you die or you send her away. The only way to send her away, to send a wife away during your lifetime, is to give her a get shifra, to give her a get. So ma isha b'shtar, af evedan b'shtar. Very simply, he learns out evet like an isha. You can only go out with a shtar. Now we said you could also be mafker him possibly. Right? We said that today, according to what we discussed, that it's possible that hefker would work, or with kesef, right? But if without kesef or without hefker, Rav Meir will say, Rav Meir says what? That you don't need a get shifra in these cases. If the pasuk would say lachavshi libasof, if it would say shachen lachavshi, send him out free, fine, kid a comrade, then you might be right. You send them out. If it would say chavshi at the end, send them out to be free, maybe send them out with a get. But here he says, he's free immediately, then send him out. That's what it seems to indicate. Because now that it says, because of it's mashma, he's free as soon as he knocks his teeth out. So it's immediate. If he knocks his tooth out or his eye out, he's automatically free at that point. It's instantaneous, and you don't need a get. Tanrabanim. So we learn like this on Brisa. He called Aleino Vasama. If you hit him on his eye and you blinded him, even one eye, doesn't mean totally blind, even one eye, presumably Aleino, or you cause him to be deaf, apparently also means one eye. I don't know if they could discern deafness in one ear, but if they could, even deafness in one ear would be enough too. So he called Aleino Vasama al Ozno V'chorsha. Now, Ozen, the ayin is Shein B'ayin is one of the favorites in Torah. We said Ozen is one of the 24. Let's say he hit him on his ear and he deafened him. So every year he goes out free. Why? Because he hit him directly on the eye, directly on the ear. Neget Eino ve'enoro. Let's say he hurt him near his eye. Neget Eino. Rashi says that. Let's say man was standing near a wall and the man banged him. Now this is, we're talking about the damage done by noise or by the wave vibrations of the noise. Rashi says Shehika Bakosel. He knocked him on the wall. So he frightened him. He frightened him so much that he lost his sight or his hearing. Interesting, right? So he says if you hit him directly on the eye or on the ear, then he goes out free. Let's say you're near his eye, meaning he banged on the wall and he got blinded by the fright or by the waves or whatever, or can they get also or he deafened him by making some noise near a wall or bang, some big bang, a loud noise, and he lost his hearing. Ain't ever hearing, right? We know that too much music, loud music, battlefield explosions, things like that cause deafness. So we know that. Apparently, it could do damage to the eye also. So in those cases, he doesn't go out free. If it was only indirect, it wasn't a direct hit, as we'd say. It wasn't a direct hit. It was he made something on the side, and that caused the deafness. So that's called indirect. So we'll see maybe Chayiv B'nei Shemayim, but he doesn't go out free. Amar Shemad Ravashi, the Maimer, the Kolaf. We want to say that noise doesn't do anything. In other words, an indirect hit where he didn't touch him at all, but he made a tremendous noise, and that frightened him or scared him, and that caused him an eye loss, a vision, or a hearing loss. That doesn't do anything. But Tani Rami Bari Cheskel, Tarnagol Shahoshit Rosha. Let's say you had a chicken, a rooster, and it stuck its head la'avi or klis focus. You had a rooster wandering around, and your neighbor had a glass vase or a jar or something. The rooster stuck his head into the jar without touching it, right? V'takabo, and he crowed, right? V'shavar, and he broke it. V'shalom nezik shalom. He's got to pay for nezik shalom. This is what we call tzroas, the machlokas, whether we're going to talk about Novakama, about an animal, not that he did damage directly with his foot, but it was some indirect damage that he did. Again, he wasn't intending to do it, but he was just crowing and it broke. You have to pay nezik shalom according to this Tana that you pay nezik shalom. Rashi says this goes like sumchas. We're going to come to Amar Behemish Zika B'Sroas Masham nezik shalom. Okay, that's what going to. Pardon? Talking about a grumma, right? You call that a grumma, right? So the question is,
the person shoves his head down the steps,
right?
And at the bottom,
he shoved him. He shoved him there.
He didn't hit him.
He pushed him. He pushed him. Here we're talking about where there was no physical contact. No physical contact. You push him in front of a car, and the car killed him. You say the car killed him, but you pushed him. You did something there. Here, you didn't do anything. There was no touching at all. So Tanagol Shosher, and he crowed in there, and he broke it. According to some of Yosef, Amr Rabbi said in Yeshiva, similarly, but this have to be this is according to Chacham that said that Chatzinet, that Tzroas only pays Chatzi Nezek, right? And they say that the special Allah Moshe Sinai that if indirect damage. The classic case of Tzroas is the animal's walking, and he walked on a rock or a stone, and it shot out, ricocheted or whatever. Is that pay nezik shalom, like that regular, or is that that it's only chazi nezik? Here he says that a sus shetzarach, if a horse neighed, if a chamor shenar, or a donkey that brayed, made some noise, right? V'shavru kelim, they broke kelim b'toch habayis. V'sham chazi nezik. They pay chazi nezik because he also said Tzroas pays chazi nezik. But the point is, you see that this is considered a direct damage, even though there was no physical contact. In other words, it was simply a noise that was made. That's what we're talking about, noise, or a voice, or really mean the noise. Noise can damage, we said, right? That if he damaged him, here we said, right, that if you hit him, you bang the wall near his eye or near his ear and cause blindness or deafness, that he doesn't go out free. Yet we see over here by the animals who either crowed or neighed or brayed, depending on the animal, and broke the glass, they have to pay. On Malay shiny Adam, it's different by a person. The Kivan, the Bardasu. Do we have any dog owners here? If you have any dog owners, they'll like this piece. Shiny Adam, the Kivan, the Bardasu. Since a man is intelligent, he frightened himself. This is what I get when every dog attacks me and start screaming and barking, and I get scared. They say, "Well, it's your fault. You shouldn't be scared. It's your fault. You're not all people are afraid of dogs, right?" So even Bardasu, even Afsam he caused himself. In other words, when an animal goes and breaks the glass, so he broke the glass. The glass is an inanimate object, and he did the damage. There, you could say that the noise damage is also damage, right? I mean, we know that if somebody is drilling next to your wall and your wall falls down to crumbling because of the waves of the noise waves, that's pretty direct damage. But if you're talking about a person that was he got scared and he lost his eyesight or his hearing, he was partial to, he himself is partially responsible because he shouldn't be so scared. If you frighten your friend and it causes damage to him, you can't call it. That's called indirect damage because it's very subjective. Some people that doesn't do them any harm, doesn't do anything, and some people it does. So b'dinei shemayim, you're chayiv. You should make it up to him, and whatever it takes, whether it's a monetary compensation or whatever. You can make it. You should make it up to him, but they wouldn't be held responsible in court. What's an example? In case of Takabozno, you made a noise. You blew a horn into his ear of a chersho, and that caused him to be deaf. Potter. But if you grabbed him, you held on to him. You held on to his ear, but Takabozno, and then you blew into his ear because you did something physical over there. So again, by a person, you're only chayiv. If a person is the recipient of the damage, you're only chayav if you had direct physical contact. But obviously, shooting with a gun or a bow and arrow would also be pretty direct. But if it was just something where you didn't touch him at all, he was injured not in some physical direct way like a gun or like a bullet or an arrow or a fist or a sword or hit him with a rock or something like that. It was simply the noise. Then it depends on the person, and you're not chayiv beginning of it. He called al eno v'chasa. Let's say you smote him on his eye, and you dimmed his eye. You caused it to be weakened. He's not blind, but you hurt it. You caused him, loss of eyesight. They went to be tuach l'mi, and he said you're 50% or 60% or 40% blind. Al sheno, or you hit him on his tooth, the nutted, and you loosened it. If he can still use them despite the fact that they've been injured, the evidence doesn't go free. So you have to destroy it. If you've just weakened it or you've damaged it in some way, given it a percentage of damage, then he doesn't go out free. If he can't use it at all, then he goes out free. Meaning, if he can't use his eye at all, he's basically what they call, I guess, legally blind. He's legally blind by that, then he goes out free. Tanyach, another Brisa said, pardon?
If he's not totally blind, is there any compensation for partial?
No, because he owns the Evet Kanani. He owns the Evet Kanani, so he'd only be compensating himself. He has no financial obligation to the Evet Kanani. If he's an Evet Ivri, he'd have to be compensated because he doesn't own the body. But here he owns the body. It's like he can't free him by giving money to himself. Like it doesn't work that way. He owns him. So here we're saying that he had a good eye or a good tooth, and he weakened it. So if he could still use it, he doesn't go out free. Let's say he already had a weakened eye. He was already partially blind. Kahuya was already weakened. The summer, and now you blinded him totally. Before he was 50% blind, now you knocked him out. He can't see anything. Or Sheno. His tooth was also Naduda. He had a loosened tooth. And you knocked it out. You totally knocked it out. If he could have used it before, even in its weakened state, the eye or the tooth respectively, he goes out free. Because now you've totally removed it. So, an interesting thing we see, that if you weakened his eye, but he could still use it, weaken his eye or his tooth, he could still use it, doesn't go out free. If it was already weakened and you knock that out totally, then he goes out for yes and cheres. In Lav, however, if before he couldn't have used it anyway, he was legally blind before, and all you've done is you made it worse, but couldn't have used it before. Either way, couldn't use it before, he can't use it now, then ain't never yes doesn't go out free. We're at the first of the wide lines. That's true. Now we need both these prices. The first price said that you took his eye from 100%, let's say, down to 50%. And but if he can't use it anymore, 50% he can't read or he can't see or he can't do whatever it needs to be done. That's he goes out free. Second price says if he was already at 50% and you knocked it down to 0, and also he goes out free. You need both these prices. Why? It's if you tell me the first price, Mishum Dimi Kara Nora Bari, because before he had good eyesight, he was 100% okay. Ashno Christian, now he's got a weakened eyesight, Nora's sight or light or sight. He's weakened. So there you might say he was 100% good before, and now he's got a weekend. So therefore, if it doesn't work, if he can't work with it, it's not good enough. Let's say the evidence necessary for reading or for looking or for seeing the work, and he can't use his eye, isn't good enough to use, even though it's not totally out. But it's so you might say that so there I understand because you took him from 100% down to 40 or 50%, and he can't use it anymore. So there he goes out free. But over here, the second case, he was already down to 50%. He was already had a weakened eyesight or tooth. So you might say maybe he doesn't go out free. He was already weakened. He was already hurt. It's like if a person was legally dead, a ghost says he was dead, and you can't kill him. If he was legally dead, not legally dead, but he was a ghost says, and he was about to die, or he was a treifa. Treifa is a person who's terminal, right? He's a terminal physical wound. It's terminal. I'm not talking about a sickness. I'm talking about if he had a terminal, the punctured something or other, that he was terminal, a punctured vital organ. A treifa, if you shoot and kill a treifa, you're not chayav because he wasn't really a live person anymore. So over here, so if you tell me that case before the first case where he was 100% and then you took him down to 50%, okay, you started with a healthy person, he's no longer healthy, and if he can't function, he goes out free. But in the second case, second brisa, where you started off, he was already weak, and maybe he doesn't go out free, even though you took him down to 0. Yes, meaning if you tell me the second case, because in the second case, you totally blinded him. You left him with no eyesight or no tooth. But in the first case, where you took him from 100% down to 50%, even though he can no longer function, but he has some eyesight, he has some use of the tooth, I might think, he doesn't go out free. So therefore, he tells me that in both cases, if he cannot use it, whether you took him from 100% down to 50%, but he can't function with it, or 50% down to 0, in both cases, he goes out free. Let's say, now, when we say over here that he goes out free, it's only if it's Shane Abdo or Shane Amaso. It's only if the master does it. It's not if somebody else does it. He has an accident, car accident or something. It says V'chiyake ish as ein Abdo as ein Amaso. Right? Right there. It says the master did it. Now let's say the master was a doctor, or some sort of a doctor, or a dentist, let's say. Let's say the doctor claimed to be an ophthalmologist, and he said, "Listen, I want you to paint the eye, meaning fix up his eye." He wanted to, he said the guy that ever complained that he has a sore eye, he has an infection or something, and the doctor was applying some balm or some medicine there, painting his eye, the summer, and by accident he blinded him. It wasn't a successful operation. Similarly, Lachta Lashino, the doctor was a dentist, and he asked him to drill his tooth, right? The peel, and he knocked out the tooth. He didn't just drill it and clean it out or whatever. He asked him for a tooth cleaning, and he knocked out his tooth. Sichek Badam, he can laugh at the master, right? The Yotze goes out free. You knocked out his eye, knocked out his tooth. Then he had a smart Evan, right? He had a loose tooth. He says, "Can you fix my tooth?" And the tooth fell out. It goes out free. Shmuel says, "No." Plus, it says "V'shichasa." It's destroy it. I just got the he has to have kavana to destroy it. Here, he was trying to help the guy. He wouldn't go out free. So Shmuel says, in this case, he wouldn't go out free. The Chum say no. He would go out free. He knocked him out, literally. But what do the Rabbanan do with V'shichasa? That you have somehow to have intention of destroying it, right? What do they do with it? What do they do with the pasuk? We get a time for this rusher. Blazer Omer Reisha Hoshit. Blazer says, let's say the master had a female slave who was giving birth. She was in labor, and he was attempting to deliver the baby. Either he was a doctor or whatever. He knew how to do this. Or Kurt's grandson, right? Well, wouldn't say that there's an evid in that case, but those are Haresha Oshit Yolamei Shifraso. Put his hand in there to try to deliver the baby. Vesima Uber Shmer. And what he did was, instead of pulling out the baby by mistake, he didn't mean to do it, he blinded the baby's eye. Now the baby's also a slave, right? The mother's a slave, the baby's a slave. So Vesima Uber Shmer, he knocked out the eye. Potter. The Eretz Potter, my time, the Sheikha side, she He's got to have attention. Here he wasn't even dealing with the eye. It wasn't like the case where the doctors and ophthalmologists, he's trying to attend to his eye or attend to his tooth. Here he was just trying to live with the baby. So that's what. So the Chum say, if he was attempting to work on the eye and he blinded him, goes out free. This is Veshichasa. What does Veshicha mean? If he wasn't even intending at all to work on the eye of the tooth, he was delivering the baby. How will Rabbi Elazar know that halacha? Because if it would only say Veshiches, right? So the halacha of the Naflan had Rabbi Elazar that if you were working or you were delivering the baby and you knocked out, it could have just said Veshiches. What is that? Shichasa is the extra hayat that teaches me not only the case where you weren't even attempting to work on the eye at all, you were delivering a baby. The Shichasa tells me I feel miskavan the Shichasa. Rashi says Nafla and Hadra Blazer from Veshiches. Probably Zeshel miskavan Shachas Klal. He wasn't working it at all. Veshichasa mashma ba'asikba. He was working on it. He was working on the eye, and the eye fell and he blinded him. I feel miskavan Shachas be'inan. Still yet. So Rabbi Elazar. So Rav Shimon will say, if it would just say Veshichas, I would know the case of Rabbi Elazar where you were attempting to deliver the baby, you weren't working on the eye. Veshichas tells me even if you're working on the eye, but if you weren't intending to destroy, you weren't intending to hurt it, you were attempting to fix his eye, and you destroyed it, then he doesn't go out free. You have to have a kavanah for that too. So you have to have kavanah for in the case of the baby, that's obvious because you weren't even working on the eye. And even the Chacham would say in that case that you're potter, that potter meaning, what do you mean potter? The Eved would not go out free in that case. That if you're working on delivering the baby, the Chacham would agree that the baby, talking about the baby going out free now, right? Because you're talking about the baby's eye, the baby would not go out free. But that's it. According to Chacham, only Rabbi Elazar's halacha would be bel, but according to Rav Shimon Gamliel, it says no. Veshichas alone would tell me that in the case of the baby wouldn't go out free because you weren't even working on the eye. Shichasa is telling me that even if you were working on the eye and you blinded him by mistake, he still goes out free. Amar Sheshis, even though everybody agrees that you weren't intending to do it. Amar Sheshis, Reisha Isa Eino Smuya. Let's say his eye was blind, he couldn't see, but v'chatata, you knocked it out. Meaning, a person could be blind. Let's say you hit him on the eye, right? You hurt him internally, you internally ruined the retina, whatever, all the parts of the eyeball inside. He can't see. Still has the eye, it just doesn't work. Let's say he was already blind, but you knocked it out. You took his eye out. Literally, he lost his eye. Ever gets from the he goes out free, even though he was already blind. My time, because he's considered he's missing a limb. And missing a limb, even if the limb didn't work, even if the limb didn't work already, but causing him to lose the limb is also a reason for Godfrey. But and we see a similar thing by animals. We have a halacha. We have a halacha to bring a carbon and an animal, a keves, right, or an ayil, a keves or ayil, or a goat, any of those three. There's halachas that can't have a blemish, right? Tamim has to be a blemish. Similarly, an ola or an asham always has to be a male animal. It's an animal, an ola always is a male, an asham is also male. A chatas or a shlamim, sometimes it's male, sometimes it's female, depending on which carbon it is. Fine. So the rules, though, about being tamim, being about unblemished, and about whether it needs to be a zachor or it doesn't have to be a zachor, like a shlamim could always be a zachor or a keva. Those are rules by an animal. When it comes to birds, we don't care. We have many karbanos where you bring two birds, either out of poverty or in the case of Violetta's, where she brings two birds, whatever the rules are. When you bring two birds, there's no such thing as a male bird versus a female bird. There are male and female birds, obviously, but there's no, the Torah does not particularize and say this has to be a male bird or a female bird. Either when it says a bird, either bird is okay. Same thing if it's got a blemish. We don't care about blemishes when it comes to the birds, right? Why is that? Because the pasuk says, Rashi quotes the pasuk. Look at Rashi about 10 lines from the bottom of the page. It says B'chol Kabbalah says Ish Ishim Beis Yisrael Sheyakov Korbono L'chol Nidreim L'Tzonchem Tamim Zachar Babakar Baksavim Veizim. It's always got to be a complete, meaning unblemished or male. If it's let's say a carbon for a tzib or whatever, when a Torah specifies bakar, but bakar baksavim. We're talking about animals, either cattle like a cow or a keves or a sheep, a lamb, but even goats. Now miluk so l'tzachem tamim zachar. Let it just say l'tzachem tamim zachar to apply all kinds of, including birds. The lishta. Why did they talk about bakar ksavim? Tell me that the rules about tamim and zachar only applies to animals, not to birds. The Torah is only makbid, is only particular about it being unblemished and being male in certain cases, only by animals, not by birds. Okay. However, let's say we're in the last line of the Gemara now. I might think Yav Shagat, but let's say the bird's feather or its wing withered. Meaning it wouldn't grow back. It's like he lost his wing, or niktaraglo, or his foot was cut off, or nechtataino, his eye was knocked out. Meaning it's missing a limb, missing a foot, missing an eye, missing a wing, right? Missing. I might think there also it's okay because the Torah doesn't say it has to be unblemished. Tamalomar when you im yavi mina oath from the birds below kolof, not all birds. Now in other places we darshan it based on the that would you bring this kind of thing to a governor? Meaning, it's one thing if the bird has a blemish, maybe it's got something on its ear or something like that, or an eye, you can't see it so well. Birds that are blemished are okay for kabbalas, but if it's missing a limb, that's already no good. That's no good. So the same thing is over here that we're applying it to human beings also, and saying even if his eye was already blind, he couldn't see, but you knocked out the eye, you made it, you took away that limb, you knocked it out, so the thing it also goes out free. And this is like a mamatzinu, really, because it's not you don't have a drush. The pasuk says, knocked it out. Well, you did knock it out, right? You look at the pasuk literally. You hit his eye, you knocked it out, or knocked out his tooth, you knocked it out, even though he was blind before. We said before, if you hit him on his eye and you blinded him so that he couldn't function anymore, that's also considered knocking it out. That's more of the drasha. This is almost like the Farish. If you knocked his eye out, and he lost it, it says, pasuk goes on, he peeled. The next pasuk says, I think, so yapil. The one pasuk talks about his eye. But first pasuk says, one pasuk goes about the eye. The second one, Shane Abdo. The second pasuk talks about the Shane. First pasuk goes about eye in his eye. The second pasuk says, "Im Shane Abdo, Shane also yapil, knocking it out." Right. So here we're talking about knocking it out. So even if he had his sight was already blinded, but you knocked it out, he also goes out free. Let's say he had an extra finger. Some people are born with 6 fingers. It's rare, but it happens. He had 6 fingers. He cut it off. He also goes up free because he knocked out a limb. He had 25 limbs, not 24 limbs. That's only if it's a finger, meaning it's in a row with the other fingers. Sometimes there are cases where a person was born with an extra finger coming out of his palm or coming out of the back of his hand. That's not considered a finger. That's just like an extra bone or something. But if there's 6, like there's an extra pinky usually, that's what we're say, a 6th finger, and that's considered a finger. And if you knocked it out, that's one of the Rosh Hashanah, and you go out free. All right, we'll pick him here tomorrow. It's Hashem from the second line. Have a good day.